Welcome to Unscripted with Jeff Pedowitz. I sit down with remarkable people from very different worlds, security and science, business and medicine, technology and the arts, for honest conversations about AI and where it's taking us. No scripts, no talking points, just what they actually think. I'm Jeff Pedowitz. Let's get into it.
When we say AI, almost everyone pictures ChatGPT or Claude writing an email. My guest today works on a completely different kind of AI, the kind that's quietly been running the world for decades. Nevra Ledwon spent her career on mathematical optimization, the AI that decides which trucks carry which goods, how a factory schedules its lines, how an airline crew its flights. And it's older than the chatbots, it's less glamorous, and it may deliver more hard business value than any of it. And now she's using generative AI to make it usable by people who were never able to touch it before. So I wanted to talk to her about the AI that nobody's actually talking about. Nevra, welcome to Unscripted. Let's get into it.
Thank you, Jeff. Nice to be here.
So to start, and I ask this of all my guests, you've been doing this for a long time. You probably have some strongly held beliefs, but is there something that you changed recently, and why?
Well, first, let me make a comment about something I liked about your intro, which is AI. People have an idea that AI equals ChatGPT, large language models. And to me, I have the loosest definition of all. To me, AI is computers doing stuff for us, computers and or machines. And so,
I like it.
So like the field that I'm in, mathematical optimization, it's not about making predictions. It's not about understanding English text or, understanding what's happening in a video. It's about making plans or schedules or routes or allocating resources efficiently. So it's just a very specialized branch that uses math. So that's it. But so what have I changed? How about something I've changed my mind about recently? What comes to mind is this new project that I conceived of about a year ago. And it's the following. So in the decades that I've been working in this field, I help companies solve really hard planning problems. And in order to do it, it's typically these multi-month long consulting projects is how we go about it. And there's this process where we go in and we spend the first four weeks-ish assessing what is their business problem, what goes into making a good plan or schedule or route. And there are all these interviews with stakeholders that we do. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice for AI to facilitate that interview and then essentially convert that into the model? And I thought to myself, well, I've worked with all of these PhDs in operations research that do this, and they all went through a lot of schooling. And so all the knowledge that they bring must exist in all of their textbooks. Right? So I thought with all the modern AI, which has been trained on all these textbooks, and maybe I could, add a little more if needed, that's enough. And so far, none of the AIs get anywhere close to being able to model a business problem and turn it into an optimization model that will run and generate a plan. So I would say that that's something that I've changed my mind about. I'd say I've learned enough to respect what a senior operations research professional brings.
There has been a bit of retrenching or pulling back by some of the tech executives who are pushing for AI everything, right? Get rid of the workforce, and now a realization that we actually do need smart people to do things, and it really should be a combination. So you've been doing optimization for a long time. And, and again, as you alluded to, most people didn't realize it's a form of AI. But, what exactly is optimization? I mean, how would you define it in layman's terms? And then where is it running in people's lives right now without them even realizing or thinking about it?
Very good question. So it's a misunderstood word. Optimization can mean, we're laying off our workers. I mean, that's not what we mean. For us, mathematical optimization comes out of the field of operations research. And I think it's easiest to understand by looking at use cases in the world. Where do you see and come across optimization problems? So things like deciding which products to put in which of your stores and how to lay them out on the shelves. How does Amazon figure out the routes that the truck takes to deliver your packages. How at the warehouse side, how do you decide the pickers or the robots in the warehouse, the path that they take to pick things off the shelves and bring them to the packing station? Jeff, you and I recently met with a gentleman who is a CTO at a large hotel brand, and you may recall he was talking about revenue management. That's optimization. Yeah. In fact, I sold to that company 25 years ago the software, Cplex, that they use to do their optimization to figure out the prices of hotel rooms. Airlines use it for hotels, for airline seat pricing. And we didn't even get into scheduling. Scheduling is a huge area or application of optimization, whether you're scheduling your crew on your airplane, your technicians, right? Which is hard to schedule technicians because they have different skill sets. They have to go to different job sites. They need certain equipment, right? So there are these constraints that limit who you can assign to which job when, in such a way that you achieve your goals, which is to get the work done on time and minimize costs, minimize employee burnout, etc. So that's what optimization is. It's narrowing down the billions or trillions of choices for a plan or a schedule or a route based on one or more objectives.
Now, optimization, it might borrow from some of the same equations, but not the same thing, let's say, as predictive modeling. Like when you go shop on Amazon and it says, oh, you might be interested in this, or you're into one of your streaming channels and you download a comedy and then all of a sudden it's showing you other comedies it might think that you want. That's not quite the same thing, but does it borrow from similar logic?
Very good question. They actually go together. So I've worked in many different branches of data and AI and machine learning, what we used to in the old days call predictive analytics. So you typically need a forecast, some sort of, you need to anticipate what's going to happen. And you might use machine learning. I mean, the simplest forecast is what happened last year. Let's just assume it's going to happen again. So you take your forecast, that becomes an input into optimization. So you might be trying to optimize your supply chain to figure out what goods do I source from where and which production facilities to ship it to. Now, in optimization, we say instead of just predicting, we are prescribing. So I think what we're learning is that the world is becoming increasingly less predictable. So you need to be able to be nimble and to adjust as the situation changes. So the ability to refresh your plans, your schedules more frequently is how you become more resilient in today's world. So prediction and optimization go together.
What happens when the intent of prediction is right, but still off? So for example, this has probably happened to you too. You watch something, this is my wife and I, it's one of my biggest complaints. Okay, so we watch an action movie or a comedy, and all of a sudden, right, it presents 20 comedies or 20 action movies. It's not that we're not interested in seeing them, but we like to have a variety. But it feels like it over pivots, right? Or over rotates into something that it thinks you want. And we see the same problem with the news, right? Where I just because I read an article about something, all of a sudden it's making an assumption that I want to see multiple articles from that point of view. How do you balance that out? How do you optimize and how do you develop predictive models that are based on intent, but more balanced and more nuanced?
So this takes me back to when I was I'll still use the old term predictive analytics. So what are you trying to predict? Is it, or what's, I guess it's more what's the goal, right? If the goal is to maximize clicks, is it to maximize satisfaction? Is it to maximize your revenue? Because certain clicks, generate more revenue. So in optimization, when you're solving a problem, like I want to configure 16 on your screen, 16, let's say, news articles. I might say that my objective is to stick with things that you like that'll make you happy and more likely to click through all of them. But I might change the objective and say, I want to diversify your perspective. And maybe I even try to make a super objective function that balances various objectives. Maybe to contribute at least 20% is educational. Maybe some of it is high margin, but like we really want you to watch this old rerun. And so that's the art, is deciding and this is the human part, that the AI will never do for you. You need a human to decide what is important, and then you tell the computer how to prioritize that.
I think that's just it, though, right? It's the ethics of it and the human input. So if I'm running a site, whether it's a news site or an entertainment, then clearly my overall objective, of course, I want you to I want you to stay engaged. I want you to read more articles. I want you to watch more shows. I don't want you to leave my platform, whatever that platform is. But that does not necessarily line up with what my objective is, which is, well, yes, I want to watch a show, or yes, I want to read articles, but I would like a variety of articles. I don't want to just see all sports. I don't want to just see all national politics or economics. I would like to have a variety. Sometimes they're mutually exclusive, right? And so even if you can optimize or develop a predictive model, you have to deal with the human in it and the competing interests of the business plus the consumer.
That's right. And sometimes in our projects, what we do is I've actually moved away from trying to create the perfect single objective function, right, for a project. What I often see is more successful is you choose, there's a variety of different objectives, and you say, show me what I get if I prioritize this versus this other one. And then I eyeball each one. And then in the end, I might hand configure, I want these from this plan, these from this, and these two, and I'll put them together by hand. But at least the computer helped me. We call these decision support tools, not decision automation tools, because the human judgment still is a factor.
So as you reflect on some of the work you've done, where's a concrete win? Supply chain, factory, crew schedule, something where because they optimized, their output really jumped off the charts?
Well, that's the cool thing about optimization, is the win is like through the roof and measurable, right? Because by definition, in an optimization use case, if you're doing supply chain planning, logistics planning, production scheduling, you have these KPIs that you bake into the problem. I want to reduce waste, I want to maximize service level, and what you do is you look at those KPIs before and after optimization. So logistics is a common one because that one's easy to measure with a well understood KPI, which is miles driven, right? So like, there was a project with a large automotive company that optimized their inbound logistics. So routing trucks to the suppliers and not only loading the trucks efficiently, but bringing them back to the production facilities just in time, just in sequence. This company had a goal of reducing their transportation costs by 2%. And the project actually delivered between 10 and 15% reduction in miles driven, which means fuel costs, which also means CO2 reduction, and some other benefits, like by loading the trailers more efficiently, there was less damage because the things weren't getting jostled around in the trucks. We filled the truck out better.
So less wear and tear on the vehicles too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, one of the projects, a client that we have right now it's supply chain planning. So they take waste cheese from different cheese producers, and they say, well, let's not waste, let's not throw it away. We're going to process it into powder that can go into, for example, pet food. And so they have to figure out when they get an order, which truck to send to pick it up, which production facility to send it to. And, some production facilities, it's a long transit time, so the fuel costs are high, but then maybe they don't have to put it into cold storage, which is expensive. Maybe they're ready to use it on the production line. So there are these trade-offs. So in that case, it was a 7-figure reduction in cold storage costs through optimization, and it was a $100,000 implementation.
Wow, that's a really good ROI.
Yeah.
So clearly, when it's working, it's awesome, right? It delivers great value. But why do you think it's been, I don't know if it's inaccessible or unachievable? It seems like out of reach over all this time that you've been working in this career, right? So what is it? Do they need a team of experts? Is that what the problem was? Or
you're right to pick up on that, and it has driven me crazy. It's like 25 years or so I've been in optimization, and the cost and the time to implement one of these projects hasn't really gone down much. And everyone thinks, oh, well, AI is here, it can do it. I think it'll get us there. it's definitely not there yet. And let me give you like a real world example, a recent one, to show you what's going on. So this European football, or we call it soccer league, needed help building a season schedule, right? So this league, they have 18 teams. Each one has to play the other team twice. So it's home and away. So it's round robin. So then they've got all these rules, like limits on which of they have these big three teams. Only one at a time can play per round. No team gets 3 home games in a row. There's travel considerations, etc. So these are all constraints on the schedule. So then you take this and they told us, they said, well, we need you to build 1,000 schedules for us so we can do a random draw, but none of the schedules can violate these like 20 rules we gave you. Okay, so the number of ways to arrange this, it's larger than the number of atoms in the universe, right? So this is a huge problem. So you can't just brute force it with a computer. So what we had to do is we had to experiment our way through solving this. And this is what our consultants do. They, I think we tried 3 very different mathematical approaches. And each one, we threw them out because we went to check it, and the rules that we thought we programmed in, they weren't really being enforced. And then we had to, build the solution checker. And eventually our developer, he came up with this way to split the problem in 2, so that like the first part was to figure out a bunch of home and away patterns for each team, like home, home, away, away, home. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing he did was then he figured out how to do the matchup so that like if team A is home in round 5, but team B is away in round 5, well, then they go together. So then he did this elimination thing, and he found a way to solve it, and he got thousands of compliance schedules. So we finally had the breakthrough, but it was a very sort of nonlinear, experimental, trial and error approach. And that's very hard to just feed into Claude and say, do it, right?
As you're talking, I was just reflecting back on our very first conversation when you and I met a couple of years ago in New York. And you're so humble because, you have been in sales for this time, but when I asked you what you do, you're like, I'm in sales. It's like you didn't talk about your background as a physicist. You didn't talk about like any of this optimization stuff. We actually spent most of the time talking about sales and marketing. So really, I'm glad that we're doing this.
Well, it's also, I'm intimidated because I work with these brilliant people that compared to them, because I'm not the modeler. I don't have a PhD in operations research. And, it's interesting as I attempt to, as I interview them, and I'm contributing to the build out of this AI consultant that will help with the front end of the project. The more I learn, the more I appreciate the expertise that they bring, that is not just the textbook stuff, like I mentioned in the beginning.
It's a lot of good people doing some really good stuff. So switching gears, Rose Consultant uses generative AI to let a non-expert actually specify an AI optimization problem, an optimization problem in 30 minutes. It is AI. How does that start to change the game now? Does that make optimization more accessible for everybody?
That's the goal. So there's this huge mid-market out there, including this particular European league, right? I mean, they don't have the budget to be able to, like Amazon has, to hire an army of, OR PhDs. So our vision at Simple Rose is to make it basically democratize optimism, make it accessible to the mid-market so that, if you're, I'm talking to a company right now, they manufacture socks. They're a regional company in North Carolina. Again, they don't have a huge IT budget. This has not been affordable to them in the past. And so the vision is, if we can dramatically reduce the time and cost and compute required to give them a great capacity plan, production schedule, that's a 1/10 or less of what it used to be, I think that's a game changer.
But is it just making it accessible, and then they'll still need like more substantive help experts, or can it actually deliver on its promise?
Well, so here's the thing. One of the challenges in delivering these projects is there are no 2 use cases, no 2 projects are the same. So like, let's take the manufacturing example I used. production scheduling, the way that you interview the client to understand that, if you are knitting socks versus you are fermenting yogurt versus you are producing this, growing cells for this bio, drug, you need to know to ask. You need the subject matter expertise to say, I need time for cells to grow in the tank. I need to do tank cleaning, so I have setup constraints, and then I have to marry that with my optimization knowledge that says, I suddenly have non-linearities in my constraints, and how do I handle that mathematically so that it's even solvable? So you have to bring together a diverse amount of subject matter expertise and very deep specialized operations research. I don't care how big the consulting firm is. There is no consulting firm on the planet that has all of that. And so to me, AI has this vast library that it allows me to do what I never could do as well before, which is structure the interview so that when you tell me I'm knitting socks and I want to, be efficient and make sure all the machines are used, I know which follow-up questions to ask you based on your answer to the prior one. And I ask you only the bare minimum needed, but the right questions to where I have exactly the information I need to hand it to my modeler and say, go. And I've just eliminated the 4 weeks of the assessment phase of the project. AI brings the library of all that expertise to be able to facilitate that dynamic questioning so that I can accelerate that part of the project. And then there's other parts of the project downstream that we have a vision that we could similarly, for example, maybe we could use AI to build the solution checker part, right? Because that's something I've noticed the OR people don't like to do, right? They want to think through the next experiment, but then like the solution checker to, so maybe there's other parts of the process, and if we whittle away at different parts of the process, the OR person is working on the really interesting creative parts. How do I attack this problem? And the AI-powered tool is streamlining more of the drudgery and the parts that it's unfair to expect them to come to the table with.
So then let's swing the pendulum the other way, right? So if AI can truly start to jump in at different parts and do the work that the operational experts are doing, what happens to the operational experts? Are we sort of automating them out of a job like some people are worried about? Do they redeploy into more specialized things, or what happens?
Well, it's interesting. So I just brought a new team member on board. He's a PhD in operations research, and what he does, he's that second layer. He's the guy that folks bring in when it's, doing a simple MIP or mixed integer program, standard textbook kind of model doesn't work. And he really likes to creatively think through the hard problems. As we think about what our ROSE consultant is going to be able to do, we don't ever envision it automating 100% of 100% of problems. Best case, I'm thinking maybe in a few years we can automate 80% of 80% of problems. So what is that? I guess that turns into 64%, which leaves 36 or so percent of the interesting stuff for the OR folks, right? So I still think maybe I'm wrong and the AI goes crazy. And even in that case, let's not forget the role that the business brings, which is they say, I'll give an example. I recently met with the German subway system in the Berlin area, BVG, and they have this goal. They want to schedule their pilots, the drivers for the subways and the buses, but what they really care about is employee satisfaction, right? And the turnover, and it's a stressful job, and they're losing people to gig work, and they want to make the jobs more enjoyable and have more flexibility. And so they have this idea, what they are doing is interviewing them, what is important to you? And they're capturing what's important and trying to incorporate that into the way they build their pilot schedules. So this is the human part that, again, AI is not going to understand what the humans want. AI is going to take what you tell them and then do the mathematical part of building candidate schedules. And again, it'll probably build a bunch of schedules, and then the human is going to go through and decide which one that they want to go with. right? So I still believe that there is always going to be a role for the different kinds of human stakeholders. But again, to me, the bigger goal is that there is just so much waste out there. I mean, if we care about our planet, our resources, there's so much waste, right?
There's a lot we can be doing.
Yeah.
And of course, people would argue, but we're doing more waste now because we're building all these data centers and we're going through water.
But what if the data center is powering an optimization model that reduces all of the food waste and chemical, expired chemicals in a manufacturing plant, right? So you kind of have to look at the full picture.
Wouldn't the cynic argue, Nevra, that maybe the AI should optimize the AI data center? So
actually, that is a use case. Yeah. That is a use case. In fact, Microsoft, I believe, was the winner of the Franz Edelman Award this year. So every year, the Informs Group, Institute for Operations Research and Management Science, awards like a Nobel Prize in optimization. And sure enough, Microsoft, for their Azure, data centers, they are using optimization to optimize the supply chain planning of the equipment. But there's multiple optimization problems in there, including like where the work goes. So absolutely, that's a good optimization problem.
Yeah, I mean, if you could reduce your footprint by some percentage, 20%, 50%, you're using less energy, so it becomes self-fulfilling. So I definitely think that would be an excellent use case for optimization and help some of the people that I think have reasonable concerns, about the impact that AI has on our environment, right? That would be a good one. There are literally billions and trillions of dollars that are being poured into AI right now, mostly generative AI related applications. But for someone that's working on the optimization side, do you think that the industry is over-investing too much there and they should be redirecting some of the money in your field?
Well, optimization is a fairly niche field. Those of us in our field also realize that optimization is compute intensive. And so another thing that we're doing at Simple Rose is working on a much more efficient solver. And that is the engine that when you hit run, instead of chugging away for 8 hours in, let's say, 8 minutes, it can return a solution because it more intelligently searches through the universe of possible plans to come to a good one. And I don't know as much about like the transformer model and how the LLMs work, but I believe that there is a large focus on a new approach that is less resource intensive to being able to understand natural language. And similarly, we're going to need something in the world model domain, right, for robotics and physical AI. So I believe that we will have some breakthroughs. And in fact, the fact that the costs are going up and all of a sudden, even my company, all of a sudden, we're all hitting these limits and we're recognizing that we're limited in how much we can do. That drives the innovation, right? Costs are...
It's like a corollary to Moore's Law, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, what do you think most everyone gets wrong about what AI is actually good for in operations?
Oh, what does everyone get wrong? I don't have an answer for that one just yet.
Sorry, we can circle back. I had to find something I could stump you with, So supply chains have been through a lot of shocks over the years, right? Pandemics, wars, tariffs.
Oh, sorry. I think I have one.
All right, go for it.
Okay, what does everyone get wrong? Okay, I have two.
Two? All right, perfect.
One we talked about a little bit. The predictions are not decisions, right?
Yeah.
And the predictions are always right. I see a lot of companies, they get all wound up and I got to get the prediction perfect, right? And I'm going to put double the effort and I'm going to get 10% better predictive power. And then I double that and I get 2% more. So it's recognizing that you will never predict perfectly and that being ready to adjust to whatever you end up getting. So prescriptive, not just predictive. I think that's one thing folks get wrong. The other one is that the problem isn't the algorithm, right? There's a lot of focus on, which algorithm do I use, but it's more, how do you translate a messy real world business problem into a set of equations that you can solve? And then which algorithm to use is less consequential, right? So for instance, in the warehousing world, I want to make my warehouse operations more efficient. Well, one problem is deciding where to lay things out. One problem is deciding when it comes off the truck where to put it. Another problem is what path do I take so I don't have congestion in my aisles. So I think that those are a couple of things that the folks get wrong.
So I bet if I gave you another minute, you'll come up with 2 or 3 more. Start to ask you about supply chain disruption.
Yeah.
Because it's, there's so much that goes through: wars, famine, pandemic, strikes, etc. So does better optimization make supply chains more resilient, or does it make them more efficient and more fragile?
If you can define what resilient means, absolutely, it will make them more resilient. So for example, one example of resilience that I mentioned earlier is just refreshing your plans more often. Too many companies, it's so hard to build a plan, and it's humans that are doing it, that you just have to live with the fact that I only get one a week. Well, what if you could refresh that plan multiple times a day? The fact that you can adjust to whatever is happening on the ground, the more real time, that's a big contributor to resilience. Another thing is, a lot of folks are caught up in how do I react today? And in optimization, we like to think about planning on 3 time horizons. So strategic long-term planning, midterm, I'm looking, let's say, for a rolling, 6 to 12 months out, and then maybe daily or hourly or, near real time. So if you think more strategically, and you think on all 3 time horizons, so you come up with a strategic plan, like in supply chain planning, where should I locate my warehouses, and where should I stock my inventory or set my inventory stock levels strategically? And then each week, where do I move things? And then each hour, when an order is placed, where do I fulfill it from? And each one feeds the other. So if you, and this is where, like, if you don't do the strategic or the tactical planning, then you may not be able to do very well when you need to fulfill that order today, and you need overnight shipping. You don't have anything already stocked close enough, and then your shipping costs are too high. So I think resilience is also about looking across all 3 planning horizons.
So 10 years out, does every company quietly run optimization like we use spreadsheets and email today?
I don't know. There certainly would be a lot less waste in the world if more companies did.
Yeah. I think every company is inefficient in many areas, right?
Yeah, and the thing with optimization is, you don't necessarily always get the absolute optimal. Sometimes it's just about a feasible, good solution, or about understanding the trade-off. So even just seeing, like if I'm doing a logistics plan, just seeing what my different KPIs are, sometimes just that visibility alone makes all the difference and changes people's behavior.
Or look, if you look at a runner or swimmer, it's all about incremental performance, right? Can I shave a 1/10 of a second, a half a second? Sure, they would love to run optimally, but there's certain things a human can't go there either. But so to your point, it doesn't have to be perfect optimization, but continuous improvement is always good.
That's right. And the progression I typically see, and most companies are very early in this progression. The first thing is you need to see what's going on, right? So you need to put in place sensors or cameras or whatever, just to know what's happening in your business. Where is your inventory, for example? Then you need to understand what is driving the behavior that you see. So then you take that understanding and you convert that into predictions. Once you have the predictions, then you can build the plans, right, based on what you're expecting to happen. And then you can execute those using, let's say, drones and robots and other agentic workflows to execute on it. So it's this sort of progression, kind of crawl, walk, run. And I do envision that more companies of all sizes are going to be further along that progression.
So in closing it out, what are you paying attention to right now that most people aren't yet?
I don't know if most people aren't, but each of these models that comes out that's better, right? Like I just looked at Fable, right? I'm waiting for, I guess it's the context window to become so big that the AI brings a real systems thinking approach to the questions I ask it and looks beyond the narrow question I'm asking and challenges me to think bigger and broader. And I don't know if that will happen, but I've noticed that it's very limited to the context that I give it. And I think a lot about that and how that could be represented, whether it's knowledge graphs or what. But like in the optimization world, if I ask it how to make my plan more resilient, it knows that I'm an optimization person. It talks to me about, the plan, but what if it stepped back and came up with a creative, different solution? Like, have you thought about whether it's even worth continuing to stock this product? Right? And kind of a crazy thought. So I think about that.
I love that. Nevra, thank you so much for being on Unscripted, and it's always good to talk to you, my friend.
You're welcome, Jeff. Thank you.
You got it.